Well, today we're here for another episode of Founders Podcast, and today's special guest is Mayor Joe Taylor. Thank you for coming on and agreeing to do this. I wasn't surprised. I mean, you're the mayor who shows up, and you're not afraid to have a conversation or support other local businesses, and so I've always appreciated that about you. And really, when we started this podcast, I was thinking of other young business owners, young men maybe who aren't in business, and I was like, look, I don't know a lot, but I know some men who do. So I was like, this podcast isn't about me. It's about inviting men who've been ahead of us, who've went through things, experienced things. And I'm like, how about we bring those old men and we let these young guys come and sit at their feet, if you will, and learn.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to look at it. Yeah. I mean, first, I appreciate you having me on, and I really appreciate more that you identify me as one of those old guys that would have some wisdom and experience. But I think it is a great way to pass it on to someone else. The problem right now is that we have social media, and social media tries to give you 30 seconds of great ideas, and they don't tell you about the 30 years of wear and tear on your body and on your mind, to get to that place where you're really creating a good hustle or a good grind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they only shows you the highlights, right?
That's right.
That's why we do marketing.
Yeah.
And that's one platform I still just can't stand is TikTok. Because my Instagram, I got it dialed in on what I want. It's good stuff, like it's educational, it's self-improvement, things like that.
That's right.
And I get on TikTok and I'm just like, man, this is not it. This is not what I want.
It's not it.
Yeah, it's not it.
Yeah, and I think, but it's so sensational. It's so just wide open, and they can make you believe anything, and that's the problem, is that we'll fall for something, and then we'll make a critical business error. And when you do, it just takes so long for you to recover, and recovering in business can be devastating, because you may not make it back.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on too is I forgot who told me. Someone told me. I was like, yeah, he online crafters. Yeah. And I was like, what? I had no idea. All I knew was like he was the mayor,
Right.
And so that was another reason I wanted to have the conversation, was just, I want to hear a little bit about your story, your background, because you're an entrepreneur, you're a veteran. I mean, you're in the fire department. Like, tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of it all,
yeah.
And it's kind of funny because now I'm 64 years old, and looking back now, I've got this strength of story. And I think that everybody's developing their story every day, and I'm just one of those guys that did that. But I'm kind of a quasi orphan. My parents died before I was 13 years old, before I was a teenager. My father died first, and then a year and a half later, my mother died, and it was just a kind of a trying time. I was one of 9 children. We went from being a lower middle class family to being, in trouble. We didn't have the system that's there now to try to catch the kids before they fall through the cracks. We kind of fell through the cracks. So I've got brothers that, either we did really, really well or really, really, not so good. Yeah. And that's the part where the world will kind of eat you up. I didn't finish school. I'm a proud recipient of a GED, and I'm not real sure that I passed every section, but they gave it to me so that I could get in the military, and I joined the Army. I was spent 15 of my years in the military as a Special Forces soldier. I jumped out of a lot of airplanes and kind of beat my body up, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah. But in that time, I learned discipline and I learned strength of character. And the things that I believe that business wants to be developed into now. I think that's why everybody's so enamored by the Navy SEAL and the Green Beret and those guys and people like us that were in special operations. We were just guys that wanted to do an incredibly good job and be extremely motivated to get that stuff done. And it just taught me how to operate. And so you fast forward past that, I actually had entered into the National Guard and was finishing up my military time, and a good friend of mine said, hey, you need to come and be a firefighter. And so I thought, well, maybe that would suit me. That would fill that need to be around the boys, still, because in that interim space of being a part-time soldier, I had started a business. That business was Landcrafters. I was a general contractor for a major power utility and for a lot of big commercial contracts. And so I had to learn how to apply some military understanding to the business world, and that doesn't normally carry over. So you become a little bit of a hard sell when it comes to corporate America, because they want you to be very soft and inviting. And so I was in a world of construction and landscaping and those kind of things, and it allowed me to be able to become somebody that was a little bit off kilter, I guess you would say, to the normal corporate model, but it allowed me to become pretty successful. You don't want to just brag on yourself too much, but I became very successful for a person that was, touting a GED anyway. Yeah. But and I'm very proud of that now. I mean, looking back, I was no doubt smart enough to be, probably any other occupation. I just don't know that I would have applied myself had I not been pressured to learn how to do life.
Yeah, yeah, and you said something right there too. Do you find it a privilege to be underestimated?
I do. I think that the best thing to do is be a come from behind person, and I am that. I tend to be a sleeper. I'm not very well known. When I ran for office 6 years ago, I had a few of my friends come around, and I believe in wise counsel. I believe you should do what you're doing here even with me. I believe you should gather some wise people around you and ask some very tough questions. And one of the questions that I asked was, can I run for political office in a town that I'd only lived in 2 years and win against a 16-year incumbent? And I had 4 people in the room. All 4 said absolutely not, which was the challenge, So their answer was, you don't have name recognition. And I said, well, I don't have name recognition as a politician, but I believe that I've got fair enough name recognition as a business owner, as, I hate the word philanthropist, but as a giver to people and giver to charity. And that's the biggest part of my life. It's the part where I believe that God finds me obedient. He may not find me obedient in any other portion of my life, but he does in giving. And I stand by that.
Giver's gain mentality. Yeah, man, that's good. One question I had when I was preparing for this, thinking like that I want to get as much wisdom as we can, for the listeners as well, was also that military background, and like how did that, like, is there a certain principle that maybe it taught you that?
Yeah, I think there's several. It's the 3 C's: courage, candor, and commitment. And I think we miss out on the one part. We know what courage is, and that's just the ability to stand up against something that's tougher than yourself. We know what commitment is, and that is to continue to drive on. But there's that one word, and it's candor. And candor, if you go to its source, its definition, is the strict adherence to honesty. And I'm not trying to tell you that I'm the most honest person in the world. I want to be. I strive to be honest, but a strict commitment to that. In saying that I'll say the things that are tough, and I'm known for saying things that are tough. I'm known for being the mayor that will go at you if you go after my employees. I'm not going to allow that to happen. So I guess the military leadership, and I was a jump master in the military, so I put people out of airplanes. That didn't seem like the greatest idea in the world for the ones that were standing in the door. Yeah. But what I've found in that is you become a salesman. You've got to convince them that going outside of that aircraft in the middle of the night at 1,250 feet wearing 100 pounds of equipment is a better idea than staying in that perfectly good airplane. Yeah. And so you become a salesman, and I think that if you look at what we based that on, being a jump master, was that we would inspect those parachutists and make sure that everything on them was going to go our way, which was going to land them safely if they did the right things. But our standard saying of the jump master was, look for what's right, and what's wrong will be glaringly apparent. So you don't go into anything, whether it's business, life, running your family, you don't go into anything looking for what's going to blow up. You look for what's right, and then the thing that's going to give you a hindrance is going to be glaringly apparent, and it's just going to jump out and hit you in the face. You make that correction, and then you can move on.
Would you say that you do have to be a little bit crazy to start a business? Or
I think you do. I actually thought about that when you sent over some pre-questioning, and I will say this. I think it takes courage. I think, for somebody to start a business, number one is they're saying, I'm willing to go out here and fail. And I believe that you have to put yourself in a position of failure to ever be accomplished. And, there are times when you know, whether it was doing PT in the military or whether it was fighting a fire and the fire would get ahead of us. All of those things, I found my fail rate. It was just, was I going to be capable to re-engage? And I think that's what I have that's been built and maybe grown or put together inside me, is that I don't have quit in me. I don't know how to quit, and that's probably going to be detrimental to me one day. That I won't know when to stop, but you know, I don't have any intent to stop. You know, the fight's worth the fight, or should have never gotten into it.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like it's I mean, I've only been a business owner for 1 year,
Yeah.
but straight out the gate, I've already seen like, this is one of the biggest self-improvement hacks. Because it's like, if you don't stay disciplined, if you don't stay on top of things, your business will fail.
That's right.
So it's like, you got to act as if everything depends on you, because for the most part it does.
It really does. And I think that's the biggest part of what I did when I started. I started a business because I had to. And you know, if you go into, you know, developing a business model and a plan and all those things that now it requires for you to be able to, you know, cash flow your business or do those things, I just started out from the ground up. You know, I couldn't. I had a young daughter. I was a young married man, and I didn't have a way to sustain them, to keep them up and take care of them. And I felt that at my core, that it was my job to see to their needs and see to their safety. And I think now, if you begin to hear people talk about what females, what women want, what wives and husbands want together, is they want to feel safe and secure. And I think developing that ability to create a safety plan inside your own family is just critical. And that's what I set out to do. So it's just one of those things where I believe that I've spent a lot of time in self-improvement not knowing that I was.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild, because there's such a challenge in being in business for yourself.
And I mean, though I'm only 32 years old.
Yeah.
I have, you know, talked to some of these young guys, you know, how did you get to where you're at? And I'm like, look, I'm not anywhere. It's kind of like what you were saying with the city. It's like, we're just getting started, you know, like we're almost, you know, we're getting somewhere. Yeah. But I tell them, you know, I'm like, look, you know, in your 20s or you're 19 or however old you are, those years, you're building that foundation.
There's no doubt about that.
You're building the foundation. So, you know, pour those hours in, learn whatever that skill is, build the craft, and I mean, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, and I think there's so many things that happen for you early in life, you know, just in your developmental years before you get out of high school or college or whatever. And you know, those things are that your parents had you go into dance class or go into music or be on a sports team, you know. Those are when you start building those little tenets and those foundational cardinal rules of your life, that I'm going to work hard, I'm going to hit that right note or the perfect step or whatever it is in dance. You know, I think that understanding that not only the arts and sports and just that day-to-day grind of being a young person, it's something that we can't sell short. It is what develops us into the person that we're going to be. You know, I've had people that asked me what was it like for my parents to die when I was young, because I just lived with a couple of brothers, you know, and we just kind of did the best we could. If you were to ask me to go back, and this is going to sound horrible and harsh, I wouldn't change it, because I'm afraid of what I might not have become. You know, that I wouldn't have been the person that cared enough to start a business. And I've owned several businesses. You know, I owned Land Crafters, owned a general contracting business, owned a fire protection business, a fire extinguisher business, and I owned a tire store one time. And I purchased a tire store, ran the tire store for a few months, knowing that a local bank wanted to purchase that property. And I thought, well, I can run the tire store for a few months and make a little bit of money, pay the mortgage until they came about wanting to get rid of that ugly tire store around their bank. And that's exactly what happened. So, and you know, I went on in life to, I've never really had much of a hobby. You know, I didn't fish, I didn't hunt, I didn't do all those things. I think all of that was fed to me as far as that adventure was done in the military. And when I left that, I went into firefighting, so I was feeding that masculine male side, you know, every day. But what I did find out is in those interim times, you've always got to have that challenge. And my challenge was then, you know, I'm not real enamored by money. I don't I'm not going to say I don't care about money. I'll never say that money doesn't matter. Money matters. We live in a world that is driven by that. But I will say that if you can find a way to build accomplishment before you build your checkbook, you can't be beat. It's impossible to be beat.
Exactly. You're obsessed with something. That alone is going to carry you so much further in business. And people, like you said, people aren't going to be able to compete with you, because for a lot of people, they may have started that for money.
That's right.
But if someone else started it for obsession, I enjoy this. I can do this all day.
That's right. And I say this all the time. You know, I've never had a bad day at work. Yeah. You know, you hear people say that, you know, if you'll get the job that you're meant for, you'll never have a bad job. I believe that if you go into every job with a good attitude, you'll never have a day's work. And I just feel that way. You know, it's just perspective. That's right. It's how you go into it in the mornings. If you walk into the office, you go, gee, I got to do this, you know, for 8 hours. You're not going to have good 8 hours, you know. But with me, I feel it's a challenge. It's an opportunity every day for me to do something great. And there's a lot of days that I fail. You know, I've got an amount of failure in my life that I'm not proud of, and those things just have to be placed where they are. And hopefully that you can put together a program that will overcome those failures. And they want to erase them. I don't want them to go away. I want them to always be in the back of my mind and be, you know, David said in the Bible when he had his troubles, you know, he said that he'd always want to hold his sin in front of his face, that he might never forget it. And I think that that's the same thing for me. My failures I hold. I don't need you to help me. I don't need you to carry my weight for me or bear my burden, because I bear it every day myself. And I think that's the part that most people get bogged down in. They become incapable of strengthening themselves because they begin to believe the negative about themselves. And that takes a lot of time. It takes some studying, and it takes might have to have a little therapy.
Yeah.
Might need a little bit of that. But,
that's right.
And I'm not going to say that I haven't had all three. And I think that just admitting your shortcoming, and in admitting your shortcoming, you'll develop your strength. I do believe that.
A lot of times in those apparent weaknesses or flaws, I've seen that when you take a different perspective, sometimes they are features. Like,
they are.
It's kind of that mentality when you were talking about the city of, like, you know, we're getting there. I feel the same way with a lot of my work. You know, like I told Adela, my wife, like I put out videos and it's like they're never good enough to me. When I send it over, I mean, they're good videos, but I'm like, it wasn't good enough. Yeah. And you know, I put everything I can into it, but I feel like that's kind of been an element that's driven me, and it seems to be driving you as well. Of like, no, always improving. You know, we're continuing making progress. We're never complacent, never being like, all right, yeah, you know, that's good enough. I made it, whatever. It's like, no, we're gonna continue raising the bar. Right. I want to set the standard. It's like, you want to set the standard, and you know, when we carry that over into the city, I feel like a word that describes you and the kind of men that we want to bring, and some women on the show, is world builders. We're building worlds, and so. When you think about that, how do you see the future for Rainbow City? I don't want you to give all the secrets.
Yeah, no, I won't. I promise you. I tell people the greatest thing that's ever been developed is an NDA, you know, a non-disclosure agreement. But and that keeps you from having to go out and tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But what it does allow you to do is to build your character in the sense that you become a very committed person, and a person that can be trusted. I just want to be a trusted servant. You know, and I know everybody says they're not a politician. You have to politic to get the job. I mean, it's a homecoming queen contest. If you got the prettiest dress, you're riding on the best convertible, you're going to win the race. It's kind of still that in politics, you know, and I don't like that part. I want to do the work. I want to do the business. But if you look at this city, when I came into office just 5.5 years ago, this city was doing about a little over $9 million worth of revenue. You know, we're setting to exceed $24 million this year. Well, that's, you know, those, if you, depending on how you use your math, it'll break down to being double digit, 15, 16% worth of increase every year. Those numbers are insane when you look at cities that love to have a 1% or 2% increase in revenue. So this city's growing, and it'll grow in spite of me, or it'll grow because of me. And I think that's why, you know, comprehensive planning, having a cohesive council, and, you know, and I have to work to get those 5 people plus my vote, which is the 6th vote, to get all of those people in agreement. You know, everybody sees us have a council meeting, and we just all seem like we're just a bunch of good old boys and we're just yes-menning all over the place. That's not true. You know, we have very tough conversations in our fully open work sessions. You know, you can come in and listen to us. We don't really fight or argue, but we do banter back and forth to find out if we're putting forth the right work product, which is my job. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Rainbow City. It's up to me to go and give them a great work product that they can say yes to. And at any point that I give them something that they can't be proud of, it's okay for them to say, Joe, we want you to go back and brush that up a bit and bring us back something that's a little more polished. I look forward to that. I'll be honest with you, I don't get it much, but I think it's because of all the history of me doing work and business. And also, I was a government worker. If you take my military time and my firefighting time, you know, for 45 years of me, I had 44 years in business, 45 years in government, all running simultaneously and running in parallel. Well, you know, I got to see behind the curtain. I got to see what the wizard did. Yeah. And so it allows for me to be able to do things that quite honestly, politicians can't do. Mm-hmm. They can't be businessmen and try to be a statesman at the same time. They've got to pick one. I don't have to pick one. Yeah. I can literally bounce from job to job and have a reasonable understanding. And I don't know it all, but I've got a reasonable understanding. But what I did learn from firefighting and from being in the military was that if I would surround myself with people smarter than me, I could never lose. And I'm telling you, there are very few of my associates, and we have about 140 associates now, that are not at or above my level. That doesn't intimidate me. Yeah. It actually makes me look like I'm pretty smart, that I could get all these smart people to see it my way.
That's right. So
that's how I see it.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. You're almost like a player coach, right?
I think
like,
it is.
Yeah, you're a player coach.
You got to be able to play the game, and if you can't, they can see right through that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's how, like with Onyx, it's like when it started out, you know, I was like a solopreneur. I was just doing, you know, the videos and some of the marketing, and I was like, no, this isn't the vision. This isn't the goal. You know, the goal, I want to have somebody who is the best at what they do in every seat. Yep. You know, they're going to be better than me. And,
right.
And like you said, that's all right, because I'm building something bigger than myself. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because one of the things that I found out in my business is scaling your business. You hear people talk about scaling their business and all that stuff. It really doesn't make sense until you've done it, until you're in the trenches and you get to $100,000 a year in total sales, and then, you know, everybody thinks that $1 million mark's the perfect number, and you can get to 300,000. My number was 300,000. If I could get to 300,000 when I was a young man, I thought I'm there. That's all I'll ever need. And I got to 300,000 pretty quick. I mean, it wasn't that hard at all. But then I thought, well, you know, what if I could get to $1 million? And the only thing that kept me from getting to $1 million was me. And it was because I stayed in my way all the time. I believed that I was the only person that could design the landscape, that could install the plants, that could run the equipment. And the more I stuck my hand into the problem, the more I got caught in the bear trap. Yeah. And so it began to just hold me in it. And until I got enough self-awareness to step away from my business and become an overseer, to become a watchman for my business, until I did that, I was in a failed position. And once I did, I went to $1 million worth of gross sales quickly. Then I went to multi-million dollars worth. And that's not a bragging point. It's just the fact that, think about how many years I wasted that I wasn't willing to get out of my own way. And I think we fail ourselves because we just don't have enough sense to realize we're not the smartest guy in the room. And if you are, you're in the wrong freaking room.
Exactly. Exactly. That's good. Do you ever just take a step back with all this, like talking about scaling? You're bringing that business mentality into government, and do you ever just take a step back though sometimes and be like, you see the speed at which it's growing, and you're like, what have I done? Yeah. Like, I know you're not going to say what have I done. Right. I know you're going to say, you know, your team, but at the same time you're a part of it. Have you ever like, oh man?
Well, you're still the head of the snake. I mean, whether it's a snake or it's an eagle, I mean, it depends on whether it'll fly or flop. Yeah. But I can say this, you know, I came into this building, you know, the day that we were getting ready to do the ribbon cutting, and you know, with the groundbreaking's not a big deal. It's just you got to get it to the finish line, and we were at the finish line. We were really close, and I even mentioned to some of your crew, that I wasn't satisfied. And I don't know that I'll ever be satisfied in the work that I'm doing. But I remember walking into this room and thinking, good grief, I can't believe we've done this. I can't believe that a city our size that's at scale was able to accomplish this. And so, yeah, it is a proud moment. It's a daddy moment that you're able to go in and say, look at what we've done, look at what we've accomplished here. And there's no doubt. And you'll hear people say that they don't want to take credit. I'll take my credit. And my credit was that I went to a council and said, guys, I need you to hear me say this, and that is, we've got to create and execute a plan. My standard saying all the time, and I say it daily almost, a good idea that goes unexecuted is just a bad idea. So if you don't have a plan and then execute that plan, you're just wasting your time. So don't waste my energy with that. And that's why you'll see my associates come in to my office, and they come in with a problem, and they come in with a solution. They may have the worst solution in the world, but they've got a solution. And then we're able to hash it out from there. And in that, they take a lot of my thinking away from me, which is probably handy, because I'm not always going to be the most sensitive response. They know that if they come in there, it's going to be tough. And I think it should be. Yeah. I think they should be challenged to go out there and do their thing and do it quite well. And they know that I only expect excellence. Anything less than that, you didn't do your work.
Right. No, that's 100% agree. And I hear a lot of CEOs that's the way their meetings run. They're like they have 10-minute windows. Yeah. And if literally, you come in there, and I've heard of a lot of them, if you didn't get to the point or you didn't make a compelling case in the first 2 minutes, they're like, yeah, go refine that.
And I think that's, early on when I came to the city, I didn't change out anyone. That came from my military experience of, you don't salt your food before you taste it. So why would I come in and change out my assistant? I didn't even know I had one. Why would that be a position that I would decide that I was going to go in and change out my administrative assistant? And, and I just simply asked her, it's Karen Frost. I said, Karen, or do you work for Rainbow City, or do you work for the mayor? And she said, I work for Rainbow City. I said, well, then you get to stay. Yeah. And I didn't realize that was a part of the political machine, was to flush the experience out so that we could bring people in that were just our friends. Yeah. I refused to do that. And I think you can look around now. It's basically the same crew that was running that $9 million, $8, $9, $10 million machine that's now running a $24, $25 million machine. So it just proves that I had it right.
Yeah.
And the military taught that for hundreds of years. They've said, just look for what's right, and it's probably right up under you. Don't taste your food, don't salt your food before you taste it, because it may be plenty salty before you get it.
I love that. And yeah, I definitely can see that correlation of the military, the business, and everything else. It's like the perspective again of, I can make something out of maybe nothing, or I can what others may see as nothing.
That's right.
It's like in someone else's hands, they may outperform you.
That's without that, there's not a challenge. Yeah. I mean, if this stuff was easy, I wouldn't want any part of it. Yeah. I've tried easy. Easy's easy. And there are things that we do daily that are just, they're just chip shots. There's nothing to it. But when you get to the place where you've got to place the ball and put it right where it's supposed to be, and that needs to be out in the parking lot, when you need to hit one out, you better be prepared to hit it out. Yes, and I think that's what I found out over time, is that we're at an experience level in Rainbow City that far exceeds most of the councils and the associate groups like we have now. My people know this. Make a decision. I'd rather you make a bad decision than no decision. Yeah. I'd rather it not be a really bad decision, so something that we can correct and adjust off of. And 99% of the time, well, way past that, that's what we do. I find out that my people have developed the ability to make decisions, and that's from the very next level below me all the way down to the bottom and everything in between. Right. Those people they're engaged, they're encouraged, and they're supported. Yeah.
They probably feel valued too, right?
They do. Absolutely, because they find out that they actually are appreciated. And I'm known as the mayor that if you come at my people on social media, I'm coming right back at you, and normally it's just in jest or it's in good fun, but there are people that'll try to go on the attack, and when they do, they know they're going to get every bit of me in return, and it's just because I hate bullies. I didn't like them when I was in school. I was redheaded and freckle-faced. You can imagine how that went for me, and back in that time, being a ginger wasn't cool. It was the guy that you picked on, and so you had to learn how to fight or you learned how to freeze. And I was a fighter, and I think that's never gone away from me.
Yeah, that's another thing I said in my last episode with my wife. Someone else said that if you're a fighter, you can make it in business because you already had that kind of in you of like, hey, okay, how hard it gets, I'm gonna keep swinging or whatever. That's good.
Business takes guts. I mean, I'll say it again. If you've got courage, and if you believe in what you're going to do, and you'll set out with all of your vigor, with all of your strength, and what power that you possess, and then you'll couple that with a spiritual understanding of who you are. I don't know how you can fail. They say that a high percentage of all millionaires have failed at one time or another. I can say I have. I didn't like it, and I think it was because I got myself so used to looking for what was right, and then when it was wrong, it just didn't feel good, and I didn't like it, and I didn't take to it very well. So I set about changing that trajectory for my life, and I didn't create paradigm shifts in my life. I made adjustments. And if you'll make those small tweaks, those small adjustments, you'll get right back on task. And when you're back on task, you'll feel it. All of a sudden, you can hear your machine get really quiet and get smooth, and then it starts picking up speed, and it creates that synergy that we all want, and that is to take one thing and add one to it, and you get 3 times the effectiveness. I believe in synergy, and that's what we're doing in Rainbow City. That's what I did in business. It's what I did in the military.
Well, and I see it even across the bridge. I see, you're showing up at all the ribbon cuttings, even in Southside. So, I see that.
That's one of the things that the mayor over there, the previous mayor as well as the one now, Joey and I talk about it. We're not divided by that river. We're actually connected by that river. And if we change even that thought process of saying that we're connected versus being in a divisional position, we can do things together then. And, and this is a game of this is mine, and I want I want to take all my toys home every afternoon. But the truth is, if the more I share in the success of our city, even in this recreation center, we brought in our community, our friend groups from school. We share in county school system, we share schools across the bridge. We wanted those friend groups to be able to stay together, because when I was a kid and you went home for the 3-month summer, which is shortened now, I don't think it's fair, but when we would go home for that short time in the summer, what we found out was that we would come back and our best friend may not be our best friend next year because they went to summer camp together, or they went to vacation Bible school or whatever together, and they lost that connection. We want this community center to create community connection that allows for our children who went through COVID. We still have kids that are COVID kids in school, and those kids failed to be allowed to socialize. This is an area where they can come and socialize and find their spot, find their space. And that means more to me than the color of the building or the pretty logos on the floor. It just means a lot to me that we can get our kids back into a place where they feel safe and sound, and then they can go and do their work and they can develop themselves.
That's good. I love that. And on that note, talking about the future, talking about the next generation, in closing, if you could leave them one message or business principle or whatever you want to say, what would be?
Oh man,
I know that's tough.
That's a good one. I think it's just everything that I've been through. Don't give up. You think you're some little poor kid that doesn't have parents, and then you'll look up one day and you're what you are, whatever that might be for me. And in my case, I far exceeded my own expectations. And I think if you'll always keep yourself humble, and I'll be honest with you, I mean, everybody knows that I'm not the the mayor that wants to go stand in the center of the room and everybody come and meet and greet me. I stand on the wall intentionally, and that way anybody that wants to come and see me can come. But I do that to remain humble. And I became a firefighter after I had already done incredibly well in business, and I did that so that somebody could tell me go wash the truck. And when you're in a position where your checking account is that of the annual salary of the whole crew in your fire truck or in your fire station, you're creating a humility position that every person in the world needs. But we had 2 rules on my fire truck, and that was to treat everyone with dignity, no matter what their quarter in life. It didn't matter where they lived in the city. It didn't matter how big or small their house was. I treated everyone the same, and I required that of my crew members. But the second thing was that I brought calm to chaos. It was my job that when I showed up in somebody's world, it would probably be the worst day of their life. It was my job to put all those pieces, as many as I could put back together, so that they could begin to rebuild their lives right where they stood, whether that was a health emergency or whether that was losing every bit of their earthly belongings. It was my job to bring calm to chaos. And I think that's what we need to learn to do as young people, young business owners, is to remain calm and find a way to battle through it and never quit.
That's good. And I appreciate that wisdom. I appreciate you taking the time to come out. I think right there, that closing message just echoes, what Jesus says is, the greatest of these will be the least of these, the first will be last, the greatest of all will be the servant of many. That principle is amazing.
That's right.
I appreciate you highlighting that, and I know you guys will get a lot of value listening to this. Thank you for watching it, and Mayor, appreciate
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.